Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for the 52nd episode of the Let's Dream podcast. This is Casey Lucid, and we also have...
This is Lee. Hope everyone's doing great.
So today we will be going over, it's kind of an interesting one. It's abstract thoughts and dreams. So we'll kind of break down the idea of abstraction and how it relates to dreams and why it's something that is beneficial and also really powerful for humanity as a whole. And things will get kind of abstract, so just follow us on this, but I think it'll be a good one. So before we get started, when I tell you that something is abstract, what do you think of, Lee?
Art usually comes to mind first, abstract art.
Okay, great. Actually, no, that's perfect. Art is really good at, specifically like just, the old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And so art is excellent in conveying complex thoughts and ideas in kind of like a snapshot, almost like a meme. But yeah, so basically... So anyway, so the definition of abstract is basically existing in thought or as an idea, but not having physical or concrete existence. That would basically kind of encapsulate all of dreams, really. Like that's all dreams are just abstract thoughts. But they feel really, really real. We'll get back to that later, but there's a whole lot of things that are abstract. Like, for example, we have abstract art, like you said, abstract language, the things like different concepts that are abstract, like love, different types of philosophies, different ideas, success, freedom, morality, anything pretty much that ends in ism. Those things are not something that you can touch or feel or smell, like taste, but they're still extremely important. Why do you think those things are so important?
When you put it in the, abstract terms of such as love, success, freedom, moralities, these are like very abstract ideas and terms. Like we can't really explain what they are because, we can, share certain feelings about them. And it's a strange thing where you experience the abstractness more than you can intellectually explain it, if that makes sense. And
yes.
At the same time, it's also like it's a very much so a social construct society or your own ideas have put in place.
Okay, so that's really perfect. I'm so glad you said that. So it's something that you can feel more so than really anything else. It's something that you feel on a deep personal level. Feelings themselves are also kind of abstract. You can't do anything with them other than feel them. So it's kind of weird, even though they drive everything that we do. So I'm glad that you brought that up. I would say that abstract thoughts are the main difference between humans and animals. Would you agree or disagree with that?
For certain stuff, sure. It's not like animals can manifest the kind of sentience humans can, but they do feel certain things and emotions.
They do.
That's observable.
Yes. No. You're right. No, I probably should have specified better. But so it's kind of like you and I can talk about something or communicate abstract ideas without them ever entering the physical world. I can give you just a whole bunch of concepts and you understand what I'm trying to convey. So it's fair to say that that's something that's just unique to humans, right? Would you say so?
I would say that even though these ideas are pretty metaphysical, we do see the effects of the ideas.
Okay, so let's go from that then. Let me ask you, so how do ideas emerge? Like, how do theories and ideas emerge? If you had to break it down or think of a process through which they emerge, how would you say that they do that?
It could be through curiosity, wondering about something in particular, how one's mind can wonder about, why an apple falls, why we're standing on Earth, why there's the sun and the moon. People wonder about these things.
Okay.
And so then our brain, what it's made for is to kind of rationalize and discover, the mechanisms behind, ideas and thoughts.
Okay. Fair enough. No, that's a decent explanation. The question would become then, so you're saying that a lot of it has to do with experiences in our physical being and experiences that we have and that we see and interact with, and then we can wonder about those things and then kind of manipulate our thoughts about how or why things might happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and our brain is, made for that, for survival.
So the thing that interests me though is how that emerges. How does something like that come to be? So we're kind of getting into the idea of emergent properties. Emergent properties, that's kind of let's see, I think I have it's the definition here from Encyclopedia Britannica. Basically, the way that they explain it is emergent properties refers to the properties that are entirely unexpected and include emergent phenomena in materials and emergent behavior in living creatures. So that's kind of like a convoluted way to say that something that, like, if you put things together, something new comes out of it. Like, for example, your brain is essentially just a bundle of neurons, right? And different, chemicals, but mainly just neurons. So all of those neurons by themselves, like each one of them individually, is not conscious, right? But when you bundle all of them together, you have a conscious brain, which is you, which is the way that you perceive the world and all of that. Does that make sense?
Maybe.
Okay. So I'll give you another example. Like,
I don't think the neurons necessarily dictate your consciousness, though. It's just, more facility of a physiological thing.
Right. But it's like, see, that's what makes emergent properties so interesting, because it's still something that's, studied. So there's not a strong grasp on it. For example, cities. Cities is another example, which is, it's a complex social organization of human beings, and we have established systems for how cities are governed. But like, if you're by yourself, obviously you're not a city, you're just like a house, like you're homesteading or whatever. But then you come into the system and it's like plugged together, and then like you're interacting with all these other agents within this complex system that we call a city. And a city is almost like, its own entity. It starts to take kind of like a character of its own. If you think about like New York has like a specific feel and character to it, even though it's comprised of many different people that inhabit it. And the same can be said about like Chicago or Tampa, Florida, like any place really, Paris, Barcelona, they all kind of have like a specific feel to it, even though it's comprised of like many individuals inside of it. That's a very abstract idea, to a dog or a cat, it's just like, oh, it's just a bunch of hairless monkeys running around doing things. But, to human beings, it's like a city, and it has meaning, and it's like we give it meaning and all these other things. It's an emergent property. It's something that wouldn't exist if just a single unit of that thing was present by itself. How does this relate to dreams? Well, dreams are just like completely abstract. Like you're just in idea land, for all intents and purposes. Why are dreams so significant is because you're basically experiencing something that your mind generated, but you can derive meaning from it. All right, like that's what we do when we share our dreams with each other. Abstracting things is like kind of like, how would you explain, for example, if you had to talk to a kid, how would you explain to a kid what love is? Like, that's a very important concept. How would you explain that to a kid?
I'll say, hey kid, it's when you really care about someone.
Okay. And how would you explain caring? Like, how would you explain caring? Caring is also another kind of like abstract concept. How do you explain that?
You have this feeling of, you want to take care of them. You want to, be near them. You don't want to see them hurt. It's a lot of ideas into that, term.
Okay. So then we kind of get into the realm of, what Carl Jung said, which was that people don't have ideas, but ideas have people. Because, we have these ideas that we transfer from person to person, and they're almost kind of like, infectious at times. They're almost viral, like that's why they call like when a video goes viral or something, So you have these ideas that sometimes just make so much sense that they completely translate to others. Well, with dreams, your dreams are kind of like, your brain is, trying to make sense of things. Sometimes dreams can be just entertaining or whatever. They can just be random chaos. I don't think they always have meaning to them. it's important to recognize that we do have that ability to derive meaning from anything, really. And that's kind of like an emergent property that's very abstract, but has real effects on our life. Animals obviously may not worry about that because they have different needs, right? Like for example, if you're stuck out in the desert and you have no food or water or anything like that, you're not worrying about all these higher concepts. You're not worrying about like philosophy or anything. Like, you're just worried about like getting food and shelter. That's the main thing. For example, I know you meditate, and I know you're into meditating. And when you're meditating, what's the goal?
The goal is something you kind of choose for yourself. Meditation, when you think of it, is just, most people think, oh, you reach a state of no mind. If you learn about meditation, then, you have a specific goal. You want to meditate for, to feel more intuitive, to feel more compassion, to feel, or, reduce anxiety, reduce depression.
Okay.
Be more introspective, certain things. So it can depend on the individual.
Huh. Okay. So would you say that meditating is kind of like more like tuning or focusing your mind in a direction that you want it to go?
I would say it's more of like training your mind to be more in line with who you are.
Okay. Okay. So, and that's everything that we just discussed obviously is very abstract, because there's no way for a person to, how do I say it? It's like they have to think about that, so it all takes place on a whole nother level. It's not physical. It's just, it's something that just happens in your mind, But then the point of you realizing who you are or how you want to direct your thoughts and feelings and actions, the point of it is to be able to manipulate your environment and your existence the way that you want it to be. Right? I'm guessing. Like, would you say that, or?
Not so much the last part where you're manipulating the existence how you want it to be.
Okay.
You're more going in line with the most basic version of yourself, experiencing life through that person. When
you say the most basic version, can you elaborate on that?
That's very abstract. Think of you and who you are, right?
Right.
Think of what you dislike, don't dislike, what you love, care about. Think of stuff that might hurt you and things that might feel you joy, right?
Okay.
And then think of the person without any of this stuff. Think about what that person can do if they were able to tolerate or understand, why they feel such things. And they can see themselves feeling such ways, right? And that is the most basic person in a gist.
Okay. Yeah. So that is kind of like, that's very abstract. You're right. It's a good example for what we're talking about. So what's the benefit of being able to think about things abstract? Yeah. What would you say is the benefit about being able to think about things in an abstract manner?
When we think of abstract terms and ideas, it's a great facility to convey how we might feel, right? When you say I love you, right? That's a lot. That's kind of a loaded term if you really think about it, right? Like, what is that? What is loaded behind the love and the I love you, right? And it's directed towards someone.
Yeah.
Right. And, and that love is through experience, with together, all the good time memories, things they do for each other.
Yeah.
And, not only that, but other, and we typically think of I love you in the sense of, caring and nurturing each other. But we also say, I love you. I love this band. I love this shirt, which is weird because you don't necessarily have the same I love you to a person that you would to, an inanimate object.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a good facility to kind of express feelings and maybe experiences.
Okay. Fair enough. Let me ask you this. So I'm trying to think of how to properly word this question so it doesn't sound like a loaded question. But it's like, would you say that, and I have no other way to really phrase this, but would you say that abstract thoughts and, concepts like love and things like that are higher mode of being? Would you say that? Like, would you agree to that? No.
No.
So let me try to kind of like back up what I'm getting at. So like if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you start with your physiological needs like air, water, food, shelter, and then you move on. You move up into, after you have those secured, then you have safety needs. Like your personal security, having resources, your health, property, and then only once you have that secured, then you move up to love and belonging, like friendships, intimacy, family. And then and then you go up from there. And I'm hesitant to use the word higher because people often associate like something being higher than something else as being more important, that's not necessarily the case. I'm just speaking in terms of emergent properties, as in something that it's difficult to achieve in the state where these other things, other necessities are not met. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You can't attain the next one without really building the previous foundation for it.
Right. So it's not necessarily higher as in like better, but just like higher up in like the steps that you need to go through to get there. Yeah. Would you say in that case then that maybe love is kind of like a higher, I don't know, mode of being?
Not necessarily. I don't, it's not really a mode of being either.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I'm just not wording it right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we actually learned they taught us about Maslow's hierarchy of needs in business school.
Okay.
If you're thinking about a company, these things like you pay someone so they have shelter, food, whatever necessary to live. They have safety in whatever the company provides, the relationships among the workers, employees, and then keeping your employees, happy. And then they can kind of really feel the best about themselves working there. And that will theoretically have a good, successful company and a group of employees.
Okay. But you can't have like a successful group of people before meeting those needs.
Exactly.
Is that possible?
Is what possible?
Is it possible to have like a successful, like before meeting the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, before meeting like the first 2 or 3 of them, is it possible, do you think, to have a successful group of people or an individual?
So I think with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it kind of encompasses everyone, right? Everyone's kind of successful in this case. But if we think about like a yogi. If we think about like a business owner who only cares about himself, they could just put the very basics at the minimum and have their employees just not have a good, relationship or esteem amongst each other and still be kind of successful. But the company will then, or the business will then not be as successful as one who, meets those needs.
Okay, I see. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay, so it's possible, but not in a good way.
Yes.
Okay, not for optimal results anyway.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, good. Well, so the way that I would say that like all of this relates to dreams, and I'm reading obviously this book from Tenzin Rinpoche, and it's a pretty heavy book. Like we'll probably do an episode on it at some point in the future, but there's a lot to go in there because a lot of Buddhism seems to be kind of like, you're building up, you're building experience and kind of like understanding, and then you kind of move. It's not so much, I would say, like as far as like building up, maybe letting go. I don't know. Either way, you're trying to progress towards a certain goal. I don't know if it's necessarily, I don't know if I would use the words to achieve something. It's not necessarily to achieve something, but to come to be like in a certain state of being. And that would be similar with like dreams and lucid dreaming. To have a lucid dream, like there's different things that a person can do. Like there's different systems in place. Like, if you're doing like the wake back to bed method or the mild method or whatever it may be, is there's different things to try to achieve that state of lucid dreaming. It's interesting. I'm just drawing a correlation between like usually, obviously, before you achieve any goal, there needs to be kind of like you need to meet certain prerequisites. You need to kind of like meet certain things. Sometimes you can just achieve the goal like kind of like spontaneously or accidentally. But for the most part, it seems like people need to go through certain steps to get to the point to where they need to be. Does that make sense? feel like I'm getting too abstract.
No, you've actually kind of lost me. So I'm lost about what we're...
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. That's bad on my part. Basically what I'm getting at is that people can choose to give something meaning, right? That's where the abstract thoughts would come from. Like, people have the ability to give things meaning. And we have certain things that obviously we need to take place in order to exist as human beings in this world, or at least as successful human beings. We have certain things that we need to take place, like food, shelter, family, all of that. As far as dreams go, dreams is just a really fascinating phenomenon, because we all dream, right? We all dream. It's an abstract experience, because we all dream, regardless of who you are. Even if you don't dream all the time, everybody can remember a dream at some point in their life. I've never met a person that had never dreamt. Even if there's no imagery, even if it's just sound, like for a person that's been born blind, everybody dreams. So the dreams are interesting is because they don't require anything. They just they just happen, like they just kind of emerge. I mean, they require for you to be alive, I guess, in order for them to happen. What I was getting at is just, it's interesting because it's what I was trying to basically draw a conclusion to is that abstract thinking is kind of like it's an inherent natural part of human being, and dreams are kind of like the ultimate abstract thought process, because you generate entire worlds that are just completely abstract.
Yeah.
And then you can go a step beyond that, and then, go into lucid dreaming, and then at that point, it's like you're manipulating your abstract thoughts like as if they were real life. So it gets like really out there when you think about it, because it's so far removed from the physical realm which we live in, but it's something that we can all do. So my whole goal of this episode was just to point out that abstract thoughts have tremendous benefits, like kind of like what we listed is like you can convey ideas to somebody else and help them understand something. And then it's natural for people to think like that. It's natural for people to use abstract thoughts to move throughout the world and do different things throughout the world. It's just that dreams are just like a whole nother level. It's like abstract thoughts to the 10th degree.
Okay. Yeah. So I do like that you put Maslow's, I do like that you've mentioned Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Because, if we take a look at how, aside from my company or business example prior, if we look at how it affects us as beings, we'll eventually reach a point in, society where all of these needs are met, right? And
right. It's
not necessarily through work, because we, with advancement in technology, all of these will be met, and that will just be provided for.
Okay.
So we'll have shelter, safety, relationships. We'll feel good about ourselves, and we'll be able to self-actualize, maybe. And the thing is, humans won't necessarily really work for this anymore, because everything will be kind of automated and self-sufficient. So humans aren't necessarily needed in this kind of environment. And what happens when we aren't needed, right? And what happens to these abstract thoughts? And that's why dreams will be so important.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. That's kind of like, so yeah, I wanted to actually kind of ask you about that, because, the last point in Maslow's hierarchy is self-actualization. So what does that mean? What does self-actualization mean? It kind of reminds me of like enlightenment, I know we did an episode a while ago on enlightenment. So I don't know,
so there's still a lot to enlightenment, and self-actualization is when you've kind of reached your full potential, right? This isn't necessarily enlightenment. It might be just like a point where you're most optimal. Maybe you're the best you, and that could be enlightenment. But to be the best you need all the previous things to be fulfilled first. And those things will be, eventually fulfilled automatically. And that's kind of terrifying.
Who was it that said there's only two tragedies in life? It's one of them is to not get what you want, and the other one is to get what you want. Who was it that said that?
I wouldn't know.
Oh man, I just what you just said kind of reminded me of that. So yeah, at that point, it's kind of like, well, the other thing I wanted to say is, like, for example, with the Buddha, like, he had all of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs met. He was a prince, he was completely set, he was good, before he became enlightened. So do you think that bears any significance to the whole story of Buddha?
Yeah, he had everything met, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And yet, when he kind of shifted outside of his kingdom, or because he was a king or a prince, he saw so much suffering, and he wondered why they were suffering, and he wasn't really fulfilled with even with all his needs met. And that really kind of depends on what is fulfilling to the person. And for Buddha, it was just that having all these things did not make him happy. And he also saw people who had nothing and they weren't happy. Why were they both in the same place if one's needs were met and the other ones weren't?
Right. So, yeah. So what would be the answer to that? Like self-actualization or?
Yeah. So, Buddha went on his journey to figure that out, and he learned the concepts of Buddhism, suffering.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, and I just, obviously Buddhism ties into, like with the way it ties into dreams is with the Bon Buddhism and their whole concept of, lucid dreaming and lucid dreaming being like a high form of meditation and all that. But yeah, basically it's, abstract thoughts are so important, and being able to control one's own mind is just so important, but it's not necessarily possible if you don't have all these other needs met, because you don't have the time to worry about thinking about that.
I don't think you can actually control your mind, though.
Really? Okay. Do go on. I'm interested in this.
Yeah, so...
not even like steering it?
So your mind will do whatever it does. It will rationalize, it will abstract things, and it will make you feel things. That doesn't necessarily make it you, right? And that's what your mind is just operating. It's just how your hand writes. It's just operating. And your mind does generate feelings, whether it be negative or positive. And if you are close to the person that you are, the most basic version of yourself, you can observe these thoughts and feelings, and then you can move in a direction you would like.
Okay.
But your mind is kind of separate from you. That's just the idea.
Because I've heard yogis talk about that, like the idea that the mind is it's more like a tool, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like you said that it's not a part of you, or that it's
more like a limb. Sorry.
Like a limb. Okay. So I think I see what you're saying.
Yeah, you can just see your mind as like a feeling or negative feeling generator.
Okay.
Rationalizer.
So it's not so much about controlling it, but just about like...
knowing what it does and how to operate with your mind will help you find success as a person.
It will help you self-actualize.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I like that. I don't know. I really like that term, self-actualization. Okay. Well, yeah, that's pretty much. I know we kind of like went off, and I know I rambled a bit, but it's an interesting concept that like abstract thoughts are so important. Obviously, they've shaped a lot of our modern world, and they've helped make all kinds of scientific breakthroughs and just philosophical achievements. But I think it's something that's innate to being human, just like dreaming, because dreams are just pretty much all abstract thought. And that's pretty much all I have to say for today's episode.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, so thank you again, Casey, for the episode. As always, if you give us a like, a comment to support us, it really means a lot to us. And thank you guys so much for sharing everything, dream stories, dream creatures, and we all really appreciate and love each and every one of you. You can always reach out to us on the subreddit, YouTube, in the comments, and we hope to hear from you soon, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye, everyone.